Welcome to Liminal Writing.
Hello, folks.
Where we've been doing this for the second season now. Time has just flew, and we've been doing liminal writing, which, for those who've just joined us, it is Lee and me doing free flow writing for 10 minutes based on a trigger phrase, a trigger line we pick up from anywhere, from our brains to something we see as we look around us and see,
Books or magazines.
and anything else we encounter or get inspired by throughout the week. We give ourselves 10 minutes to write freely, and then we read it back to each other. And this is in this podcast, we read it aloud and share it with you,
Yeah.
unedited. And then we discuss what it was that triggered or what it all means to us, right?
For this particular one that we're going to read, we did it in 2021, and it was from our list of places that we visited, a list of cities or towns that we visited separately. So this one is in a place in northern Philippines on the main island of Luzon, and it's called Sagada.
In the mountain province.
So been there a couple of times. Sess, how many times have you been to
Oh
Sagada?
my God, a couple of times too. And I think once we went together, we had a concert. No?
Was I there? I wasn't there. It was in
Really?
Patatag, but I wasn't there in the Sagada
Yeah.
one.
So
No.
Lee and I also were also together, both in protest music performance and also in street theater.
Yes.
Yeah, that was in ages ago, in our youth.
Performed in the
So
streets and the stages
yeah,
on basketball courts.
yes. All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Ready? I never
Yes.
am ready.
So why don't you go first?
Oh, okay. Here we go. Sagada. I remember being outside Sagada's chapel, freezing cold in a borrowed Kalinga costume, waiting for my cue to enter the chapel turned concert venue. It was Patatag on tour, our singing group,
Yeah.
and I believe it was in early 1987 or maybe late 1986 with a piece I put piece something freeze in the war. We at that time we sang protest songs, some of them with not so subtle references to armed revolutionaries, with a lot of courage and a pinch of recklessness. We were young. I had already been married the previous year, so by then I was 20 years old, a year away from being a mother to my own child. There was the trek across the rice fields to waterfalls. I do not remember much of it, but I do remember the extra day or so spent in the area. We also visited a fellow Patatag member's family. Norman, our guitarist, had been born and spent his early years in Sagada. His mom still lived there, and we met her. We were able to visit their house, and we also witnessed the funeral rites of a local resident, their dead having sat a sitting position for a couple of days, feet swollen from all bodily fluids flowing down to her feet. And then the funeral march was a basketball, quote unquote, game. They actually jokingly called it basketball, where the corpse is lifted above heads of carrying men who jostle for position to have a turn in lifting the corpse. They believe too that to be dripped on by the bodily fluids of the dead body bodes good luck. At least that is what I remember. When we got to the face of a cliff where wooden coffins were hanging, people started clapping as the wooden coffin of their dead was lifted to the upper crevices of the cliff's face. Their claps echoed around the rock walls. It was a beautiful send off.
Wow. Oh my God, I
It's
can't wait
funny
to
because
talk
we
about
wrote
it.
this in 2021, but it's the first time I'm seeing it again because we kind of randomly been picking on old writing and saying, let's read
Yeah.
it and process it again. So,
All right. Well, let me
so,
read
so
mine so we can talk about the experience, the separate
yeah.
experience we had.
So
Okay,
your turn.
here. Sagada. These green hills and scraggly gray rocks rising, the pine trees, immigrants from lands far from our shores, brought by people foreign to our land, to fashion the native beauty and be more comforting to what their eyes know. I balance my way on a pilapil, joyfully trying to not step on the rice seedlings, finding my bearings as my eyes fall on the spring in the middle of tiered rice fields. A wondrous moment for me. How precious water, bracing and invigorating, lungs numbingly cold, find its way to the surface of this treasured land. Like the tribes people who bear witness to all those who come to be blessed in the beauty of Sagada, ever so always getting from the bounty, never staying long enough to give of themselves, to fill in the spaces where beauty allows for it to be, reshaped, repurposed, circling back.
Nice. I think we
I think we
practiced the
landed on the
same track. Is
same.
that towards the falls?
Correct. Where there's the falls and
My
there's a
God, what a
small
track.
pool, a small pool on the bottom of it, and you can swim, which I swam.
Yes.
This was a trip that I took with your manong. It was my
Same,
first trip to
same.
Sagada. I
That's
was
my
there as
eldest,
part of the
or my eldest
yeah,
brother was
manong,
our
your manong
director, you
Chris.
see.
Yeah, he was
Yes,
my
me.
boss
And
then.
yeah, he was
He
your
was my
boss
boss
at the time.
at the CCP. So
Cultural
we were doing an
center.
outreach. We were part of, there was a
Ah, and
festival.
he likes doing that, and he'll just say, "It's just near. We can. It's just a walk.
Correct. He said, "Oy, malapit lang, malapit."
It's it's just near." And then everyone's like, "Ah, God, it's just
It
crazy." And
was awesome.
but
It
it's
was
awesome,
awesome.
yeah. When
You
you
know
get
what?
there,
Because it was my
and
first time.
Lee mentioned pilapil. Pilapil is the I don't know what it is in, but it's the rice fields,
It's the border of where
the
you can
border,
walk,
the walkway
right?
of between the rice paddies.
And it was really wondrous for me. One, because it was my first time ever going to Sagada, and it was always a fabled place. Because
Right.
even I first heard about it when I was in university, freshman university, and you see all these older theater folks talk about Sagada and this magical place. I remember they were talking about Scotty then, see William Scott, the
Oh,
historian, the Anglican
wow.
historian.
Yes.
But the way that they describe it is like there's this American historian who's living there,
Yeah.
and it's in the middle of the pines,
Yeah.
and you see the tribes folk still living in their traditional home, wearing what we would see as costume, but for them it's their
Yes.
everyday wear.
Yeah.
So
I think we were lucky to have seen it in the early years
I think
because
so.
now it's become a destination and become more accessible. But
It was so bumpy to get
oh my
there. It
God,
was
to
like
get there was
jarring.
what was that? I think it was like 8 hours from the city of Baguio up north, and then
Yeah,
it's winding like almost a single lane thing.
correct.
It was
Correct. Because you
just
could look and
scary
then the
as
cliffs, you
hell.
could see the cliffs going
Yeah,
down there.
yeah, and the old buses where you would be there with the chickens and stuff.
What we did is it was I was sitting at the back of the crew cab. And then so it
Ah,
didn't have any windows. It was like open
oh,
on both sides. So it was like really cold. And
and you
then you
couldn't
could feel,
see?
well, you could see because there were parts like the sun was out,
Yeah,
but you could see like the mountains and the
yeah,
rice
yeah.
paddies. But you could also feel like the little stones that would
Oh
get
my
fly
God, yeah.
by, right? So
It was scary.
it was always a magical place. So when I finally
Yeah.
got there, it was like, wow.
I went a
It
couple of times
really
after that first time, the one I described, but I still remember that whole trip was actually quite stressful for me, scary.
is.
Although I tried to keep concentrating on the beauty all around, but still it was just it felt so risky. But and
Mm.
then I would remember that there would be a sigh of relief. There's that final up final curve up the hill when I know it's gonna be Sagada coming already. So
Oh, see,
then I
that
will
part I
like
don't
breathe
remember.
a sigh of relief. But yeah, it was always just worth the trip when you're there.
Yeah.
But I haven't been for a long time now,
Mm.
decades. But I know that it's more accessible and more people are going, and I'm sure it's very much different from the Sagada we saw before.
I
Yeah.
think you were so fortunate to see a funeral, a traditional
Yeah, and
funeral.
it was
That's
it was also not
amazing.
like touristy thing. It was a friend of ours, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and his
I didn't
family.
know that you guys. So it was like you and the other
Yes,
patatags too were
we
there.
went. Yeah,
Ah,
it was such an experience. The one I described, the hanging coffins, right? They have that hanging
yes,
coffin in Sagada. So
yes,
the
yes.
slots, it's slots in the cliff wall where
Mm,
they put the coffins there.
yeah,
Wooden. And then it's just the way people were just clapping. And because it's cliff face, right around you,
yeah,
it echoes. So the clapping, it was glorious. It was almost a celebratory feel to it.
yeah.
I guess that's how they see it. A
Well,
send off. Beautiful.
yes, yeah. That person now is part of the ancestors overlooking the whole town, right?
I mean,
I'm glad we got to read this because it's like a far, far memory, and yet there's a part in our brain that keeps it
yeah.
there,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like I was able to experience that. I did that. I
Yeah.
got to visit that.
One of my other visits later on was with a different hat when I was
Mm,
doing reducing and events organizing. So I actually did for an alumni group of LaSalle
yeah.
and brought artists, and we had that stage, and that, remember that soccer field? They did soccer there. They
Yeah.
played
A
it.
playing
But it's
field
up
in the middle.
by the church, and then there's like a plateau level field.
Yes.
But we set up the stage there, and your background is then the rest of Sagada at
Yeah.
sunset. Oh, it's beautiful. And then music.
Yeah. I remember because you mentioned a Baguio, right? So that was your starting off point to get to Sagada.
Yeah, it's like
For me,
our in the Philippines, it's like our resort town, right?
yeah, it's
Um,
considered the summer capital.
it's cool because it's cool up there. Well, the rest of the
Then I don't know if it still
yeah, well,
is.
a little still is, but apparently, but crowded and polluted. Anyway,
Nah,
yes, you were
yeah.
saying.
I took it from because we came from documenting as part of the cultural center of the Philippines work. We were there to document a festival.
Oh
So it
wow.
was somewhere in Bontoc. So we
Oh,
took it from Bontoc to get
the
to
other
Sagada.
side. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, we didn't pass through
Yeah, yeah.
Baguio.
But that's beautiful too, because it's rice terraces and all. You're going up.
Yeah, and still going
Wow.
super, super jagging on the
Yeah.
in the van. Oh my goodness. But
Anyway,
it's a beautiful memory, a beautiful place,
it
and
is.
you get to meet the people who lived their lives there and protect the land because they have so much
Yeah.
respect for the land and in the way that they try to
Yeah.
keep it really close to what the traditions are.
All right.
There
So
you go, folks. A slice of
that's
history,
nice.
our personal history mixed in
I
with a bit of
know.
what Philippine history is. Sagada. Because you also mentioned about the peace
Oh yes,
negotiations
that
that were
was
happening there. I think it's
the
called the
peace accord.
Bodong.
What I don't remember what it was called. The peace
Bodong? But
peace.
I know that the
No, no,
net
no.
that
The peace negotiations in the whole country, like a ceasefire, like
oh
that.
the ceasefire. All right.
That time. This was
Because
post because this was already post Marcos era,
yeah.
the
So this is
beginning of Cory Aquino's. So there was this whole effort for
yeah,
peace negotiations with the far left.
yeah.
Anyway. All
Mhm.
right. Thank you for
So
joining us and listening to our podcast or watching us on YouTube, wherever you're joining us from.
all right, folks.
Okay, till the
See you
next
next time.
time. Bye.